Okay, well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's presentation where we're going to be giving you a broad overview of exporting organic agri-food products to around the world and really getting into some of the details. In preparing for this presentation, I realize how much is not written down, and this is hopefully going to be a useful tool for exporters because gathering all the information about how exactly to logistically export your products around the world is certainly not an easy task to find. So I do appreciate that. Also, things change quite frequently, and there's quite a few updates in here to organic equivalency arrangements, etc. So we'll go into all the details. Just a quick highlight, I am the executive director of the Canada Organic Trade Association. My name is Tia Loftsgard, and our association is based here in Ottawa, and we're a membership-based organization for the organic sector, and we really do represent everything from farmers, certification bodies, importers, exporters, manufacturers, retailers even, anybody involved in the organic value chain. We have 4 areas that we specifically work on, and we are very much known as sort of the international face of organic. So the areas that we work on is market access, of course, market research, education. We do a lot on consumer education and government relations. So you can always check out our website because I'll be referring to different areas but our website does really kind of capture everything. And am speaking to you on export and international equivalencies because I am the chair of the Technical Advisory Committee on International Organic Equivalencies. And the mandate of this committee is to really work closely with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to help them with our industry knowledge identify any technical variances between Canadian and foreign organic standards, to review and provide guidance on the responses to the foreign competent authority, and of course to provide any other recommendations whenever we see a trade barrier or areas where we would see benefit for the organic sector to have nuances to our trade arrangements. So I will get into the details of that, but at first I want to step back and think, organic used to only look like this back in the day, and it has certainly evolved into also looking like this. So in this presentation today, what we're going to do is really look at sort of the standards and the history and how things have come together to the point that we are now the 6th largest organic consuming nation, and we are a major player on the export scene. So currently, the Canadian market is at 6.936 billion. I have mentioned that we are the 6th largest organic consuming nation in the world. Combined with the United States, North America makes up 50% of all consumer demand. So you think, well, why export? Well, clearly there's still opportunities for business beyond these 2 countries. And we have been growing, of course, and meeting consumer demand. 66% of Canadians are buying organic. So there is certainly a huge demand across many different product categories, mostly led by fruit and veg. And it is interesting to see that we have grown our capacity. The global average on share of organic farms is usually 1.5. We are double that. So we are, from a production point of view, we're quite savvy. We have a lot of organic certified operators in the country. Our acreage has been increasing. This is the statistics that our association does on an annual basis, collaborating with the organic certification bodies. And it is important for us to know that we're now over 7,500 certified operators, and you can see broken down by province. So we're growing, as an organic community, we're growing. And of course, with that, it requires professionalism, and it also requires a lot more mechanisms for international trade. So the other role that I have played in the last few years is the chair of the Organic Data Committee, which was part of the Organic Value Chain Roundtable. And every time I have to show these slides, I have to excuse that I know that the data is wrong. We have been working with an interdepartmental committee to try and actually look at how we can get correct import and export data, because we know we're a major player for export, but if you look at the data that's being tracked by the federal government, there's only 45 import codes. So it looks like we're importing double the amount of our exports. And simply, this is just mechanically wrong, I know for sure. The data for exports is only based off of 14 HS codes. We are definitely exporting, we estimate, around $2 billion worth of sales. And currently we run a program at the Canada Organic Trade Association in collaboration with the agri-marketing program of the federal government, where we do a lot of export work and facilitation. We'll go through some of the programs that we're running that you're welcome to participate in. But just in 1 year alone, through the efforts of our association and the funding that we get, we were able to track over $15 million in sales just through, I think, about 10 companies. So that, we know that these numbers are wrong, but it's the best that we've got, and we'll continue the conversations to try and get proper export data. The demand for organic is strong. Here is a chart that was put together in 2017 through some of the different market reports that are generated. I put the link because if you're looking for specific data, there is a few different organic specific reports put together by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's Market Intelligence Division. And so they did a projection on where organic demand would be happening globally. And you can see Hong Kong is quite strong, China, Europe, India's very strong, USA, South Korea, and Japan. So these projections, of course, were put together, and I don't have the actual, where they wound up, but as Canadians, of course, the USA being the top organic market in the whole world, we are very fortunate to have strong relationships and ties there. So we've gotten to this point now where we have international organic trade arrangements with 5 countries, as well as the European Union, which the focus, of course, on creating these arrangements was to make sure that we're targeting the largest organic markets. So we now have these arrangements in place with over 90% of the organic marketplace. But I think it's important for us to stand back and say, what is the backbone of those arrangements? And it's all about the organic standards. So I'm just going to give you a very important history lesson just to make sure we're all on the same page, which is, when did organic standards start to become unified? And the International Federation of Organic Agricultural Movement, of course, we consider it almost like the United Nations for organic. They created the very first international standard in 1972. And that is an important benchmark because it brought together all the different countries that all had their own voluntary standards and tried to create a baseline for what does organic mean internationally. And then, of course, the European Union, they progressed, and they were the first commission to be able to formalize exactly what their standards are and actually have government oversight. Followed by the USDA in the United States, the National Organic Program in 2002. And in 2009, this is when Canada finally, it was in June 2009, we ended up finalizing our overalls. The standards were actually finished, but the Canada Organic regime was in its final implementation phase. So now just to kind of look at our associations and industry, we used to be a part of only the Organic Trade Association in the United States. Canadians and Americans were all together. And of course, when it came to the equivalencies and us forming our own standards, we had to have a separate legal entity. So in 2007, it was because of the standards and it was because of equivalency that we broke off and started our own legal not-for-profit in Canada in 2007. And it's always important for us to look at the basis for some of these decisions and the timelines. Of course, our history with the Canadian organic movement predates, of course, 2009. And I've given you a bit of a trajectory of how we got to the place where we went from being the organic products regime to then the Safe Food for Canadians Act coming in 2012, and the regulation being put in place in January 15th, 2019. And just last Friday, we now have the updated organic standards were published on December 11th, and we will go into a little bit more detail on that moving forward. It is important that, of course, we were governed by the 2015 organic standards, and I've put the links there for anybody who's new to organic. I'm assuming most of you have some history with it, but just to make sure that everybody has all the details they need. So the 2015 standards is what was the most up-to-date standards until last Friday. Now we have the updated standards. I've created the links there for you. And it's important that we have anybody who's already certified organic will need to transition over. So everybody has a year in order to do that. If you're brand new to the organic system, you will need to comply with the new standards straight away. The other big change that's happened when the Safe Food for Canadians Act was announced was organic previously lived in the Canadian Agricultural Act, and now with all the acts of all the food product categories merging under the Safe Food for Canadians Act, we now could have an aquaculture standard be included. So as of January 15th, 2019, aquaculture was now incorporated as by reference. And there was a 2-year phase-in period in regards to CFIA's role and ensuring that everybody that was involved in aquaculture is now being certified by the formal accredited certification bodies. And of course, as of January 15th, 2021, so it's coming, the CFIA will be able to start their enforcement procedures on that. So here you go is the copy of the aquaculture standard. And just to highlight that there's only one standard because they built in the permitted substances list into this specific, into the standard. So the first thing to think about if you're a certified operator and you're bringing in any imported ingredients is to make sure that the products that you're bringing in from a from an international location does comply. And CFIA recently updated their website to make it a little bit easier to search by country. So I'm just giving you an example there that if you're looking at bringing in products from India, it would need to be certified by one of those 3 that are listed as being recognized and compliant with the Canadian organic standards. So everything that comes into this country needs to make sure that it's compliant with either the organic Canada organic regime and certified against that standard, or I will get to a lot more detail, but on the National Organic Program, we also have some flexibility to be able to certify to the NOP. So there are the 2 options. So before we ever had equivalency happening, which don't worry, I'm going to go into the rest of the presentation is all about equivalency. But before we had equivalency arrangements happening, you would essentially have to get direct certification happening. So an example would be if I was to bring in cocoa from Dominican Republic, I would need to actually have a Canadian certifier actually go and inspect it according to the certification requirements of Canada to ensure that it's compliant. And that, of course, is cumbersome, timely, costly, and inefficient. So we started these discussions around equivalency back around, well, early 2000s. I was a part of a lot of those discussions where we were talking about we need one national standard. If we don't have one national standard, nobody wants to trade with Canada because you've got all these voluntary standards that are all different. So of course, you know, in a couple screens ago, I was showing you that it took time for us to get to the place that we agreed on what are those clear one standard for Canada. And it was that process that allowed us to continue a trade with the EU and Japan, who were threatening at the time to cut off trade relations with Canadian organic products. So you can understand that the standard setting process and international trade are inextricably connected, and it's a part of our history. And it is probably the best move that we've ever made as an organic system was to work through equivalencies. So, what is an equivalency? It is a trade arrangement. It is not a trade agreement. And I want to make that very clear. It is very much a handshake between the competent authority in our country, which is Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and the competent authority in the trading country, in the trading nation. So it's an arrangement between the two countries that recognizes that the other's organic certification designation is equivalent. And equivalent doesn't always mean equivalent. Sometimes we have to call out critical variances, and there's extra criteria that needs to be inspected by the certification bodies. And I will go into the detail with each one to kind of highlight that for you. It allows, of course, the products to be produced, processed, certified to either country's organic standards and to be sold as organic in both countries. So that sounds wonderful. And we have really achieved quite a few different equivalency arrangements. I'm going to go into the details of particularly the NOP agreement because that's the USDA organic one. Because when we signed, well, when we went into our enforcement phase in 2009, the same day that we finalized our Canadian organic regime, we also signed our equivalency arrangement with the US. So there was a lot of work towards ensuring that trade flow with the US was as seamless as possible. So let's go into it. So for the US and Canada, we both have our own standards and we both have our own regulations, of course, which are both laws essentially. These equivalency arrangement, it applies to ingredients as well as finished products, and that products could use the logo of either USDA or the Canada Organic regime logo. So you could have access either way, no problem, which really has helped to not have to relabel altogether with different logos. And then products entering the US under Canadian Organic Regime certification. There's one critical variance that the US would not accept under our standards, and it was around agricultural products derived from animals treated with antibiotics shall not be marketed as organic in the US. In the Canadian standards, we do permit that if an animal is very unhealthy and sick, that for humane purposes, that they could be treated with antibiotics. And then, of course, removed from the herd and not deemed to be organic. But this was something that they wanted to very much call out, that any animals treated with antibiotics, including dairy products, cannot be considered organic in the United States. So moving on to the areas that the Canadians deem to be not equivalent, agricultural products produced with the use of sodium nitrate, which is also called Chilean nitrate, shall not be sold or marketed as organic in Canada. Agricultural products produced by hydroponic or aeroponic production methods shall not be sold or marketed in Canada. And their chicken standards are very different than us. So their livestocking rates must be compliant with our criteria as outlined. So this actually, I need to actually update the slide because with the new standards that came out on Friday, the requirements for poultry and shade and creating shade structures as well as winter structures is verandas is quite different than where the US is in their chicken poultry standards. So then how it works is the certification bodies are responsible for assessing their clients against these additional requirements, which we call the critical variances. And of course, anything that's going to be destined for another country, you need to respect their domestic labeling requirements, including any differences in the organic labeling requirements. And one thing to note, because we do so much trade with the US, is in Canada, we do not permit 100% organic. So Of course, our criteria is 95% and up can have the use of the Canada Organic logo, but you cannot use the term 100% organic. So, but in the United States, they do permit it. So you'll see some of that distinction. And then in the US, a made with claim, so anything from 70 to 95%, it's treated as a percentage claim. So you have to say, what is that percentage of organic ingredients in Canada? So just to give you like a sense of what does an organic certificate look like when it is using the organic equivalencies. So this, I'm just grabbing a random sample. And this is a US operator who wants to sell into Canada. Currently on this certificate, it doesn't give any information around the equivalency, but on the second page, you can see that the certification body has gone that extra step and created this paperwork, which says that they are equivalent to the US-Canada agreement. So that, without that, they have not been inspected for any of the critical variances, and it cannot be sold in Canada. So just to also say that it's important for, when you're doing any form of trade, there's a lot of paperwork. It's not just, that main page that I circulated back here. So of course you want to get all the details of exactly what is certified. And this actually is for a commodity player. I'm going to give you an example of more of a finished product. So preferred popcorn, another random sample from another certification body. This main page, of course, doesn't say anything that they're compliant to Canada's standards. But on the second page, you can see under the products and services, certified in compliance with the terms of the US-Canada Organic Equivalency Arrangement. So, and then it lists, of course, all the different products. You'll see when we get down to the Japan section that there's a separate listing if they were to trade also to Japan on this same example. It's also to be noted that all organic certificates seem to be just a little bit different. There's criteria in regards to what must be included, but sometimes they look a little bit different. So it's important to, know how to navigate and know what you're looking for. Also, the US, we do have a very unique agreement with them in arrangement with them because you can certify to the NOP standards in a third country. So most of the arrangements that we have, you can only certify to the EU standards in the EU. You can only certify to the Japanese standards in Japan. But with the arrangement that we made with the US, you can actually certify to the NOP and then make sure that you've got the additional paperwork that says that you're compliant with the US-Canada Organic Equivalency Arrangement. And that could be in India, that could be in Taiwan, it could be in any place where we don't actually have an equivalency. So that has really helped facilitate a lot of international trade. And I've given you the US Organic Integrity Database allows for you to look for a certifier in a third country in order to be able to do that. So it's really why I'm spending so much time on the US, because it is what most people would do is certified to the NOP and or core. And now I need to speak to something that is very unique to the United States, and it is not recognized in Canada. I had to do a full webinar because we were seeing so many incidences of non-compliance due to people bringing in products from India, Israel, or New Zealand, because the United States, they have recognition agreements. So they're not equivalencies. They are a bilateral agreement with these 3 locations that recognize and work together, but it can only be for products sold into the United States. They cannot come up to Canada because that extra step has not been done. So I'm giving you import and export information because frequently people have a multi-ingredient product and you need to make sure that you're compliant with this. So just giving you an example, with India, the USDA on their recognition agreement, they would allow the foreign government, which in this case in India is called APEDA, to accredit certifying agents in their country to the USDA organic standards. And that accreditation, of course, is of several certification bodies, but those products can only be imported for sale into the United States. And so that is that is something that we've found is causing some confusion in regards to any international importing companies. So just want to really highlight that you need to make sure that the organic certificate says that it's compliant to the USDA, or sorry, the US Canada Organic Equivalency Arrangement. Now we'll go on to the EU. So it was the second one arrangement that we ever signed. And first it was limited to certain product categories, but now we have expanded it to multi-ingredient products and wine in 2016. So we don't have any critical variances with the EU. And this is the list of products that are covered under the scope. And the key criteria here is to note that the unprocessed products have to be grown in Canada. And if you're processing products, that's fine. So example would be you're importing coffee. Well, that's not grown in Canada. So, but you are processing it, you're roasting it. So then it can be actually included under the equivalency. But an example that would not work is you're bringing in quinoa from Bolivia, and all you're doing is repackaging it, and you're not processing it or changing it or transforming it in any way. That cannot be included under this equivalency arrangement. So that's when you would have to actually certify to the EU standards directly, and you would have to pay to have a recognized EU certification body come to Canada and certify it according to their specific standards. So it's a bit complicated, but important to note. Here's an example of what you would want to have for your export certificate. So in this situation, you've got the company is not only just certified to the US, they also are to the EU. And of course, your certificate would say under which standards, because now we not only have the agricultural standard, we also have the aquaculture standard, which we'll be able to start trading now that it's included. So that's sort of a quick overview there. Another key thing to know about the EU is they have their EU traces system. So essentially it's an online portal that they created because they wanted better traceability of organic products coming into their country, to reduce any type of fraud, to have less administrative burden so that the certificates are directly uploaded into their system. And it gives them all sorts of great statistical data on their imports, which is exactly what we would love for our Canada. So I could do a whole webinar on the EU Traces system, and we have done that in the past, but I think it's more appropriate to give you these reference pages so that you can learn on your own if you are looking to export to Europe. And here is an example as well where there's an additional criteria that you need to have a transaction certificate for selling into the EU. So for example, we just made this up, this example for you, that it is required to have transaction certificates in a handful of countries, and I'll try to point them out as we go through the webinar. It's not required for the United States currently, but in the US, there is a new bill called Strengthening Organic Integrity, which is going through their lawmaking process currently. And it will require that all importers in the United States are certified, and export certificates of this nature will be required in the future. So currently not yet, and there'll probably be a phase-in period, but we're waiting to learn more. So going on, of course, because Switzerland's not in the EU, but they have basically copied everything from the EU. So there's no critical variances, export certificates are required, and pretty much the standards are very, very similar. So not a problem. Let's go on to Japan. We started trading with them in 2014 under the equivalency arrangement. Their standard was only for plants, essentially crops and processed products. And so we didn't actually have any arrangement in regards to livestock. And they just created some standards around livestock, and we just expanded that equivalency arrangement in June. In the middle of COVID, we signed actually 2 equivalency arrangements. So I'm very proud of that because it was a lot of work and a lot of quick deadlines that we had to sort through. So just to highlight that Canadian plant-based livestock products and processed products can be certified to the Canadian organic regime and exported to Japan, but there's 4 conditions. It needs to be produced or final packaging and processing in Canada. Products have to be imported by a JAS. JAS is the name of their organic program. They have to be a certified importer. So if anybody is looking for that list of certified importers, I can help you out. Um, but essentially, you can't just ship your products to Japan. It has to be to a certified importer as organic. It needs to be accompanied by a Japanese import certificate. So I've shown you some examples. And that the label, the organic label, must be applied before sale in Japan by that JAS certified importer or prior to export under specific conditions in Canada. So here is the example of the popcorn fella, where the USDA MAF, this is an example of the US agreement, so this is not the Canadian one, where it does highlight that on the certificate. And it would be important in the Canadian example too for that to be highlighted and be very specific to which exact products. Here is, of course, the transaction certificate. So, anything that's going to go, this is where they would get their specifics when it comes to the statistics of what's coming in and that they can monitor it. They've got the certificate in addition to the transaction certificate. So the Canada-Costa Rica organic equivalency, there's really not much to mention there. They don't require transaction certificates. We have no critical variances. And there also there's not a lot of trade happening there. So I don't have much to add. It's pretty simple. And you just have to make sure that your certificate says that it is compliant with the Canada-Costa Rica organic equivalency. Taiwan. This is our newest equivalency that we just signed. And because of COVID, we had to make it an interim agreement. Taiwan, before equivalency in May, they would accept all Canadian products with the core logo, no problem. And that is currently the situation in Hong Kong. You can just sell your products to Hong Kong and they will accept it. But Taiwan went ahead and created a regulation for organics just last year in 2019, May 30th, 2019. And they sent notice through the WTO that they wanted to ensure that they had equivalency arrangements for, and that if you weren't going to do an equivalency, you would have to certify to the Taiwan standards. So of course we hustled and made sure that we hit the criteria. Because we were leading on this work, I know that their standards didn't have as much detail as Canada wanted in order for us to deem are they equivalent or not. And this is why we chose to do a 1-year equivalency until they can either modify their standards or give us more information in regards to specific areas. So it's valid until May 29th, and CFIA was not able to do an on-site inspection, which is another reason why we wanted it to be interim due to COVID. It is including agricultural products of plant origin, processed foods of plant origin, livestock products, but limited to what the Taiwan standards have in their standard. And this was one of the big areas where we're like, you don't have a lot of detail. Processed food products containing livestock ingredients, of course, limited again to what's specified in their criteria. And it's the first equivalency that we've got for aquaculture products. So that's very exciting to see that there's an opportunity for our aquaculture sector. Canadian companies cannot use the organic logo. So they have created a rule, and it's the same in, this is specific to Taiwan. So Taiwanese companies can use it, but not for imported products. And the other thing that is set out in the agreement is that their honey did not meet our honey criteria. So we do not accept their honey to be sold into our country. So that's the one critical variance there. And of course, they do require a transaction certificate as well. So Canada does not require transaction certificates, nor does the first importer have to be certified unless they're processing the product or manipulating it in any way. So this is one of the key distinctions where there's more criteria if you're going to be exporting than what you're maybe used to if you're doing any type of import. And then the agreement that we all want. We have been trying to get a equivalency arrangement with South Korea. We started working strongly on it since 2014. And it is something that is only currently available if you're going to seek direct certification. So we don't have an equivalency agreement. I know that we have, our competent authority has met with the Korean officials through MAFRA, that's the competent authority in Korea, multiple times. We hosted the equivalency arrangement partners meeting in Canada last December, and we had multiple conversations about our desire to. So I feel like eventually we're going to get there, but everybody keeps asking me when, and it really is outside of the technical assessment process. It is more at a political nature at this point in time. And then Mexico. Mexico approached Canada just in around the new NAFTA agreement. Well, it started back in 2016 that they wanted to ensure that they would have a strong trading relationship, I believe because of political concern with the US in between our two nations. So we started the assessment process way back, and we are waiting essentially for the CFIA to feel comfortable that they have their systems in place in order to regulate their own regime. So it's not necessarily held up by the standards, it's making sure that the Mexican competent authority has got all their ducks in a row for their oversight system. And Brexit. So just this morning, I got an email and I have been having conversations with CFIA in regards to what's going to happen when the UK leaves at the end of this month. And all I have so far is, don't worry, we hope to have something in place, but it seems like it's going well. So, but I did receive an email this morning in regards to what's happening with the US. So I'm going to share this with the disclaimer that we actually don't know what's going to happen for Canada, but this is what the US has been able to communicate out to their stakeholders. That a new equivalency arrangement would enter into force on January 1st due to Brexit. The points to point out is that the UK will maintain current EU organic regulations with the same labeling and seal use allowed. The EU will recognize the UK certifiers. And Great Britain, so England, Scotland, and Wales, will require a new import certificate beginning January 1st, 2021. Products shipped by December 31st, 2020 are not subject to the new certificate. And Northern Ireland will maintain its use of the EU traces system and not require a new import certificate. So that's what we know currently. We will be doing more communiques coming out of Canada Organic Trade Association as soon as we receive the notice. So stay tuned. I have communicated how urgent it is for us to know exactly what is being negotiated, but I've been told that it's all going to be fine. So I just want to convey that that it's looking like things are going to be fairly regular as we are used to exporting to the EU. So now how to get involved. So I've mentioned that we do a lot of trade facilitation work. We've had 2 incoming buyers missions this year already. We've been doing incoming buyers missions for many years, generally surrounding different trade shows that are happening across the country, and usually limited to 3 or 4 buyers that we can afford to bring in. But this year with COVID, we've gone online and we were able to attract 10 buyers to our last sessions. We ran one in September and another one just wrapped up last week. And so we've got 2 more planned in the early half of the year, which you're welcome to register for. January 18th to 22nd, we're going to focus on finished products. And then March 1st to the 5th, we will focus on commodities. So the way that we do this is we really look at what the buyers are looking for, and we look at what Canadian businesses have, and we match make you. So we, of course, give as much information as possible on which companies are registered, and we also provide assistance in regards to market data. We do a lot of market data reports. So if you're wanting to learn more about, Germany and the German market, we've got reports that we can help you understand what the opportunity is. So all these incoming buyers missions, I mentioned we are a membership-based association, so it's free for any of our members who are with CODA already, and we are charging $100 plus tax for non-members. We do also provide funding to ship your samples. Usually you'd just be handing them across the table at a trade show, but here, of course, you need to ship them overseas. So we will provide funding up to 50% of the cost to be able to help facilitate you shipping your samples overseas. So that's one opportunity. You can go to our Canada-Organic website, go to the events, and you'll see the missions listed there, and it'll lead you over to the Eventbrite where you need to fill out your paperwork. But we welcome everybody to participate in these because it's really the only way that we can help facilitate trade during the pandemic. And then funding, we have a large envelope of funding to attend trade shows. So I'm giving you an example of several different trade shows that we have included in our funding envelope. It is only open to CODA members that we will provide this funding. Obviously, we're not traveling right now, so we've rerouted some of this funding so that more people can participate. For example, for BioFoc, which is the largest organic trade show in the world, based in Nuremberg, Germany, they've gone online, and we do currently have that. It'll be in February that the event happens. We have, I believe, 13 or 14 funding spaces in order to fund people's e-booths or electronic booths. But generally, we would be funding 50% of travel costs, per diems, which also covers your food, your inner-city travel, and your hotel, which is a set amount set by the government, and 50% of your booth or registration costs. And then, of course, whenever we are doing any of these events, we sometimes organize retailer tours or specific meetings with trade commissioners to help you understand that market better. And or sometimes we also do matchmaking events at some of these different things. So we do have funding for BioFoc available currently, and I just submitted our next grant application to cover the next 2 years of funding, which would cover April 1st, 2021 to 2023. And this is a handful of the different trade shows that we will be able to fund. There's more as well, and we also have to wait until our grant is approved. So, but happy to help facilitate wherever we can. And I'll just leave it there and ask if you have any questions. So I believe that everybody can